On today's show, the Bucks preseason is underway with a win. We didn't see Giannis, Dame, or Chris Middleton in this game, which meant that there were plenty of big minutes for some new faces. So we're going to break down what we saw, but the Bucks undefeated in 2023, 2024. I'm sure there's a lot of people very excited about
that. You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. Alongside me, the founder of BrewHoop.com, a long-time voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's show that's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And we thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen, particularly now the games have started. It's officially the first post-game show of the season, so it's going to be a lot of fun from here on out. So if you haven't done so yet, subscribe or turn the notifications on, drop a like, get involved in the show. Let us know what you thought about the Bucks beating the Bulls today. I'll be in there and we'll interact with all of you, particularly on YouTube. So get involved. We appreciate it. It's free to do, and it really helps us along the way. I just did look at what episode this is. This is episode 1654, Frank. Technically, I did take over the show as host on episode 654. So episode 1000 since I took over the show. Geez, we've talked so much rubbish on this podcast about the Milwaukee Bucks. A title in there as well. But today it felt like a little bit of a new beginning, even if you didn't see Giannis and Dame on the floor, Frank. They were there on the sideline. It looked like they were having a lot of laughs together and trying to discuss what was going on the floor. But we should start there. I was disappointed. I thought we were going to see those two guys in the home opener in the preseason. I thought the Bucks were going to trot them out for at least 10 minutes. It looked like there was a decent crowd in the house.
Yeah, unfortunately, classic Bucks not caring about hometown fans. Bad product. They gave them, 2 minutes of Dame Lillard walking into the arena 2 weeks ago or whatever. So that's enough of Dame Lillard until I think the last preseason game of the year they're back in Milwaukee. So fingers crossed we'll see him then. I had certainly hoped that they might give Giannis and Dame just 6 minutes to start the game or something like that. Because again, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I get it. It's a preseason game. That this is sort of the way the NBA is, right? Like they don't want to take chances with anything. But a lot of fans, probably can't easily afford to go to regular season games. Yeah. And you hope that, you can catch a glimpse of the stars going to a preseason game. Obviously us sickos, probably a lot of people in the arena hopefully knew what they were kind of risking going to a preseason game, and that it was going to be a lot of, Robin Lopez dribble handoffs and, waiting to see young guys and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, again, if this was a regular season game, the Bucks would be hopefully fined by the league under the new rest policy. But, as it was, we didn't expect Chris Middleton to play, obviously, although it was great to hear that he practiced 5-on-5 in the last couple of days. But yeah, obviously not taking any chances with Dame and Giannis, which, again, I get it. But if you went out to the game today, obviously it's disappointing. And, again, it's how much, even if they played, right, what were we going to glean from, game one of the preseason? Not a whole lot. But it obviously makes it even harder because Chicago started essentially their starters. Bucks did not. I was looking at some of the other box scores in the league. I think LeBron didn't play in the Lakers game yesterday, but I believe Steph and CP and Klay Thompson, I think, played for the Warriors. I saw today Embiid rested and Harden rested, perhaps for different reasons. The rest of the Sixers played, and the Celtics pretty much played full strength. I think Jason Tatum played 27 minutes today, which, sort of underscores a recurring theme that maybe isn't so good for the Celtics in terms of him playing way too many minutes. But yeah, a little disappointing. Those guys didn't at least break a sweat. But it is what it is. And at least the Bucks fans got to see a win. And, I'm not going to say it was like a wildly entertaining game, but there were, some moments that, again, if you're a hardcore NBA basketball fan, you could have maybe taken some enjoyment in and, got kind of close. And thankfully the Bucks closed it out.
Well, they do play the Lakers in a few days' time or later this week. So maybe they're just waiting for the big unveiling against LeBron. I think that's even on national TV or on ESPN or something like that, I think, for a preseason game. So anyway, it was a little bit disappointing from that aspect, no question. But as I mentioned in the opener, it did give us an opportunity to see some other guys play extended minutes. I guess we should probably start with MarJon Beauchamp. I think he's the player that everyone is kind of excited about, or at least intrigued with what you're going to see. Damian Lillard was pumping him up the other day, as we discussed on this show. So he actually led the team in minutes, 27 minutes, just a tick under 28 there. He finished with 18 points on the night, 9 rebounds. I think a few of those points came certainly in the fourth quarter when it was absolutely the bench of the Chicago team. But he's a guy that we've discussed a lot, that people in an ideal world, if he does take a step, he's one of the guys that should be competing for the starting spot at the 2-guard position or whatever that position is. So even though we might not take a lot from a team perspective in terms of what does Adrian Griffin want from this team because of all the funky lineups they had, it's kind of like an extended version of Summer League where you want to see MarJon Beauchamp look more comfortable and you want to see him hopefully look like he is ready to take on a bigger role.
Yeah, I feel like we're used to, young players playing relatively few minutes, getting relatively few opportunities to do stuff in games. And then we're kind of like left to try to like extrapolate and dig for like positive signs from, very limited showings. And I think this game for MarJon was interesting because like, I don't know if it was like, you mentioned the line, obviously the scoring line, overall stat line looks good. Right. And it was kind of, in a weird way, I'd say the positive maybe is that it wasn't like a loud 18 points, 9 rebounds, 3. I thought he just sort of was, kind of consistently in the flow of the game. And I think he was, more dangerous sort of in transition, semi-transition than necessarily creating, from the half court. He had a chance late to kind of ice the game with the drive and overlaid it. Got a pretty good look driving to the basket. But thankfully, our Lord and Savior, Drew Timme, eventually cleaned up the miss and put in the, I guess, technically, I don't know if that was technically the game winner because they were like, free throws or whatever. And MarJon got to the line. I think he had 8 free throw attempts, but I think 4 of them came on fouls in the last, 20 seconds or so, which kind of inflated his numbers a little bit. But hey, he made the free throws. So yeah, I think, this is the question with him, right? We saw in Vegas, he had 2 really good games to start and then 2 complete kind of MIA games thereafter. So preseason, we'll see how much opportunity he gets here. Hopefully, as we said, obviously, hopefully we see some of the regulars, right, with Dame and Giannis. But Chris Middleton presumably will, I'd be surprised if Chris plays on Tuesday against the Lakers. So, the Wings may have a little bit longer runway to show what they can do. And so, again, I expect to see MarJon in every game. It's not like he's just not going to play in the preseason once Chris is back and Giannis and Dame are back. But 28 minutes obviously is a longer leash than maybe he'll get in some of these other games. So, yeah, credit to him. I thought he looked solid. I think he did hit 1 corner 3. A couple other threes didn't look too particularly convincing or confident. And so I think, it's a little bit of a give and take because obviously whoever is the 5th guy playing with the starters, that's what they're mainly going to kind of get a diet of is decent looks at threes. And obviously you're not going to be asked to kind of create with the ball in your hands in the half court a whole lot, which, that's probably fine, right? That's obviously not what you would say is MarJon's strength at this point. So, yeah, I think, hey, you would have given me this option, MarJon was going for 18, 9, and 3 before the game. I would have said, great, sign me up for that. 2 fouls. I don't know that I noticed him a whole lot on defense, but also not in a negative way. So yeah, I'd say definitely encouraging start to year number 2 for MarJon. And again, with him, it's just like consistency, right? Can he just, we saw it last year. He had sort of these flashes, he had a couple of really good games, like for instance, that OKC game. And then the next game kind of like disappears and just can't find a rhythm, can't get into a flow. So that's obviously one of the big things for young players is just how do you get to the point of having a higher night-to-night floor so that it's not just kind of boom and bust. So yeah, encouraging first game for MarJon. Now do it again, right?
I think the most important point that you made there is, I think from what I read and see from Bucks fans and what they want from MarJon, we all want to see a lot. But the point is that if he's going to force his way into the rotation, as you pointed to, and be one of the 7 or 8 guys, hopefully by the back end of the season, he's going to be in a pretty minimized role. And I thought even the 3 assists is a nice number for him. We haven't seen a lot of playmaking, but I thought he made a couple of nice passes. His linking up with Thanasis, the chemistry there was nice on a couple of plays. So, I think anytime you see something added like that we haven't seen in the past, it is a positive. So, yeah, I thought a pretty good start for MarJon, but maybe another guy that could come into this starting group and a new player saw him for the first time tonight was Malik Beasley. I want to talk about him coming up next after we talk about the Game Time app, the sponsor of today's podcast. And we're all been in a position where you got a big event coming up, you don't have the tickets, maybe you're stressing out, and Game Time can help you in that regard because it's fast and easy, and it's the best way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theatre events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You get to see the view from your seat and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for that event that you really want to go to. So all you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, preseason rolls on this week on Locked On Bucks, and we might talk about Andre Jackson a little bit later in this show, but I'm going to get someone that watched him very closely in college. We'll have a podcast about the new young players on the Milwaukee Bucks coming up this week, as well as more post-game shows on Locked On Bucks. So make sure you stick with us there. But Malik Beasley, I asked this question to Camille the other day on the podcast, Frank, and I said, is Malik Beasley the most talented scorer the Bucks have had coming off the bench, assuming he comes off the bench, in the Giannis era? Now, Camille very quickly pointed out that maybe Bobby Portis fits in that category. So that was some Bobby Portis erasure from me, unintended. But I was thinking about the guards, and I thought Malik Beasley tonight, again, some weird lineups. But if you didn't already know it, and maybe you're watching Malik Beasley for the first time or you haven't seen a lot of him, you found out that he is a scorer, and he is going to look to score. He knocked down a couple of threes, 3 3-pointers overall, but he had 13 points, but a couple of those were deep. They were contested. He didn't have any hesitation in taking those shots. So I think his role is going to be pretty well defined in this team, but I thought he was impressive in the little minutes that we saw. And defensively, people will ask the question, and certainly we've had listeners point in and say that he's not known for his defense, no question. He's definitely seemed engaged on the defensive end. He seemed like he was trying. And, sometimes we see with guys that score, there is a visible lack of effort. I don't think that that's necessarily the case with Malik Beasley, even if it was only a first little glimpse here in preseason. But I thought he was as advertised. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, missed his first few shots, had, I think, a play out of pick and roll that he had a turnover on. So kind of the first, I don't know if it was 6 minutes or whatever it was, kind of the first shift was not so impressive. And then you saw kind of with the 3-point shooting, the fact that he does not need much room, whether it's, off the catch, fairly deep, guarded, or being able to take a screen and pull up quickly. I think he had one of those. I think it might've been a Rolo screen. He pulled up pretty quickly for a straightaway 3. So we've talked about just the volume of threes that he gets up. I think it was around 11 threes per 36 last year, which, would have been really the only guy other than him in that category would have been AJ Green. Now we have Dame Lillard on this team too. Basically, you have like 3 of the roughly top 5-ish guys in terms of just like getting up threes with, I think Steph Steph is definitely number one. And then I think Clay is actually still one of the other guys right there, sort of just in terms of just volume 3-point shooting, which is that is a skill, right? We obviously spent a lot of time talking about Grayson Allen and how one of his sort of limiting factors was that he was a guy who seemed to need to kind of get his feet set and needed to have more of a rhythm to shoot threes. Was not a guy that shot a lot off the dribble, maybe like a, pump fake, one dribble, sidestep type thing, but not a guy that was pulling up off movement, not necessarily a really dynamic 3-point shooter. So if Beasley can be that obviously helps a lot. I don't think it's as important. It's interesting. I think he was more important before Damian Lillard joined the team because Dame is, the ball's going to be in his hands so much with his high usage relative to like a Drew. I think Beasley's role is kind of less important. But to me, I thought maybe the most interesting thing that happened today was the comments post game from Adrian Griffin talking about, basically that, he was that they had sort of had discussions with him that he was going to have to take. Let me get the exact quote, but effectively it was that he was oftentimes going to have to defend. Yeah, here it is. He's going to have to take the toughest assignment most nights, which I don't believe that this was in the context of him saying that he's going to be the starter, but he started tonight. And if Adrian Griffin is telling Malik Beasley that he's going to have to take the toughest defensive assignment most nights, the implication there is that is in the context of being a starter, and he's defending, essentially like the more difficult guard. It's kind of an interesting question. It's like, okay, so if it's like a big small forward, is that he also defending that guy, or is it he's defending the guy that Dame otherwise might have to defend? So he's going to end up having to defend a lot of point guards. To be continued, I guess. We'll see exactly what kind of was meant by that. But yeah, I mean, let's just say after having had the benefit of watching Drew Holiday and having Drew Holiday be the default stopper in the backcourt, and oftentimes obviously also shifting up to defending big wings as well. We are in a different kind of unknown world now in terms of defense with this team. And so not exactly exciting if Malik Beasley is going to have to be your guard stopper or potentially even your wing stopper. So we'll see. But certainly, if you ask me to now put some money on who is going to start, I guess reading between the lines and the fact that Beasley started this game, granted, obviously players missing, but a combination of him starting today, him looking good today, and then perhaps most importantly, the comments from Adrian Griffin. I mean, at this point, I'm going to just guess that maybe that means that Malik Beasley is going to be the guy to be that fifth starter, which in that case, you would look at the Bucks starting five and say, well, they're going to score a crap ton of points, and they may give up certainly more than they have in recent years, but offense is probably not going to be an issue with that group for sure.
It is going to be a different mindset. And I think one of the guys that we've asked a lot of questions about, just because how does this actually implicate Brook Lopez and what he can do defensively? He only played very limited minutes tonight. And as we discussed, I don't think, given the lineups the Bucks had, that there's a lot that can be taken away, even though they were talking about it on the broadcast, as we have, trying to take indicators from what Adrian Griffin has said about being more aggressive defensively. And guys are going to be in different roles to what they've been in the past. We'll see if we have any clues to this over the preseason, but I think it's probably going to be something we'll definitely learn more about through the early parts of the regular season. But I think for Malik Beasley, the other interesting thing was the 4 assists. Now, he is definitely not known for his playmaking. In fact, I think per 36 over his career, he averages 2 assists per game. So the fact he had 4 assists in 21 minutes tonight is at least noteworthy. We'll see. It probably doesn't project to hold long-term with him as a facilitator. I think he's going to be out there for scoring. You mentioned the volume of 3-point shots. He got up 7 in his 21 minutes on the court. So he's going to shoot a lot. And they mentioned on the broadcast the Bucks and shooting threes and how it's going to change. Yeah, maybe just by virtue of having those two guys on the roster, there's still going to be plenty of threes going up. And we saw Brook Lopez, he got his shots up in his small minutes as well. Andre Jackson Jr. was a player that I think there was a lot of intrigue around coming into tonight. He definitely had a big dunk that I think everyone was waiting for, and they're going to be excited to see whether he has more of that. But I might ask you about Andre Jackson Jr. coming up next, and then any other players that you saw from this Bucks preseason win. After we talk about Jace Medical, a sponsor of today's show, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency situation. Jace Medical makes sure you have that medication in hand. It's simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care as well. So don't get caught underprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Andre Jackson Jr., Frank, I think one of the guys that certainly the Bucks seem to be pretty high on draft night and through the training camp so far. He only played 17 minutes in this game. Not a lot of scoring, which I think that we would come to expect, but in some ways, a very Andre Jackson Jr. line, whether the 4 rebounds, the 3 assists, the steal, the block. He does a lot of things. Scoring probably not, certainly shooting, not something that I think he's known for coming in tonight. I just thought defensively he was interesting to watch. First possession comes in, he's guarding DeRozan, fouls within about 3 seconds, and he was very eager and he was physical. And it's like, okay, we understand that this guy is an athlete. He will want to play defense. That's one of the things people like about him, but he looked like he was overly eager on that first possession. A couple of the vets had some words to him. I think he settled down after that. But certainly to me, on the defensive end, his activity did stand out for a first preseason game. He wasn't shying away from the challenge of defending DeMar DeRozan, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, you put him on, the team the last couple of years, again, just by virtue of the fact that you had Drew and you had, like the Wes Matthews of the world, the odds of a rookie sort of differentiating because of defensive energy was always going to be pretty low. But with this team and the lack of, wing defenders, I don't know, right? I mean, especially depending on what happens injury wise, I think there's a version of the world where, he could scrape out some sort of, again, seasons are long, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I'm expecting that he's going to be a rotation guy for 82 games, but wouldn't surprise me at all, if at some point during the season he has some spells where he's playing, semi-regularly due to injury or whatever, and because he's a guy that can bring a defensive energy that obviously we would probably guess this team is going to be in need of. So as you said, it was funny. He gets the foul. He had a really good defensive possession, probably, a couple minutes later, where he really bothered DeRozan, forced a pass out. Honestly, like they could have, easily given him the, veteran versus rookie foul call on that play. They didn't. There are definitely going to be nights where that gets called against him. And then right before the end of the half, he had a poke away when DeRozan was kind of like dribbling the ball near midway. So just like small stuff like that, just being kind of an agitator. We've talked about how our guesses this team may foul more than the previous Bud versions over the last few years, given how much of a priority it was for those Bud teams not to foul. And, we've heard Adrian Griffin talk about the new priority on aggressiveness and forcing turnovers and, sort of dictating kind of more physicality in ways that maybe they haven't in the past. So probably more fouls. And I'm sure there will be some youthful indiscretion from the likes of, Andre Jackson Jr. and MarJon, et cetera. So we'll see. But, I thought he's, he's a very unique player. In the half court, just doesn't necessarily seem to know what to do with the ball. I mean, I think he's got pretty good passing instincts, but, he had that one really nice little like ball fake into a driving kind of scoop shot that he hit in the second half. But in the first half had kind of an awkward, he shoots like floaters from like very far out. We saw that in summer league. He tried a banker. It wasn't that far out, but it's sort of funny. It just seems like he doesn't really know how. He's obviously very athletic and has a pretty good handle, but really doesn't seem to know how to use that to actually get close enough to the basket to get layups and dunks in half court. But in transition, we saw obviously he can be electric. And, I think there is a big difference, I think, between being, athletic and having ball handling skills in a transition sort of state versus when you have to do it against a set defense. And, for him, I think there's kind of a night and day difference when he's in transition versus half court. But yeah, I mean, it was a really fun couple minutes there where he had a huge dunk, threw a great bounce pass to Thanasis for a dunk. And so those guys had a nice little interchange, which the irony was I've kind of joked about it all summer, how like basically like they're, like he has shades of Thanasis, which, today Thanasis was a really good version of Thanasis today. And you kind of saw it too. I mean, Thanasis is like bigger, much stronger than Andre is. Andre is much more of a, guard 2s and 3s versus Thanasis is like practically basically like a 4-man in most respects. But I thought Thanasis had really good energy tonight, had a couple blocks, after Bulls had come out and kind of started to hit some threes and extend their lead. And, him with whichever Lopez brother was out there at the time, they actually did a nice job defending the rim. But yeah, good game from Andre Jackson. And one thing I forgot to mention, I meant to say it before, when you're talking about bench scoring and Malik Beasley. Obviously, Malik Beasley may not be a bench scorer if he's starting, but the guy that I kind of keep thinking about as far as potential analogs to players we've seen over the past few years, I think that Bryn Forbes is the guy that I always think of. Forbes in the year that he was with the Bucks averaged about 19 points per 36, 63% true shooting. I mean, he shot the shit out of the ball from three. I think he was like mid 40s, I think, that year. So 41% 3-point shooter. Malik Beasley's not that level of 3-point shooter in terms of percentage goes. He's a 38% career shooter, but again, the volume has always been higher than Bryn. Bryn was about 9 threes per 36 attempted.
I thought we were getting close to the internet cutouts section of the podcast. I think it always happens around the 25-minute mark. But you're back, which is
back. It's people comment on it. Like, look, I have 500 Mbps. I'm literally 15 feet from my router. I'm on like, a real laptop. Like, I don't know what it is. You're right, Kane. Maybe this is, our service or something, but like clockwork, halfway through these pods, 3/4 of the way through these pods, I always disappear for about 10 seconds. So I apologize, but basically the point was some shades of Bryn Forbes in Malik Beasley. Maybe that's the internet just telling me to like wrap it up and get to your point, Frank. But yeah, be curious how much of a kind of Bryn Forbes type of impact he has this year. Obviously, the follow-up would be, well, hopefully he defends better than Bryn Forbes, especially if Adrian Griffin is planning to make him have the toughest defensive duty night in and night out. We would have not said that Bryn Forbes would carry that responsibility for sure, but Beasley's a couple inches taller, but also not a big guy. I mean, he's a 6'7" wingspan guy, was basically like 200 pounds. I don't even know if might be 190 something. So certainly a guy that, is not an overly big guy, but was interesting. I mean, defensively, he started on Zach LaVine tonight. Jay Crowder, we'll talk maybe about Jay a little bit, but Jay was defending DeRozan to start the game at least. But again, this is what preseason games too. It's not like Chicago was like spamming, get the ball to DeMar Rosen, at the elbow against Jay Crowder. It's something like that, right? Or they were not trying to like go at Malik Beasley play after play after play. Regular season playoffs, it may be a different story, but after one game at least, it felt fairly vanilla in that regard.
So Jay Crowder, you mentioned, I texted this in our group a little bit earlier. I thought in the game he looked very eager. I mean, he wasn't here this time last year. We've mentioned that it was sort of a weird preparation for him, but he is a guy that when you talk about wild cards for the Bucks or guys that you really hope can be an impact player, Jay Crowder's going to have to be that, because we've spoken about the wing rotation a little bit. So the fact he played 20 minutes, I think he'll be a guy that probably will play a fair bit of basketball here during the preseason, I would have to guess. Campaign, someone we didn't mention, he was a DMP tonight as well. I think people are looking forward to seeing him play for the Bucks. So it'll be interesting. They play Tuesday night in Memphis, and then they've got a long break before they play in LA. And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times they're going to spend the whole week over in California, which I'm sure will be nice for them. But yeah, I can't really picture the Bucks bringing back any of the big names for this game in Memphis, which might mean that some of those guys we've discussed tonight are going to get more of an opportunity. Was there anyone we missed or anything on your mind from tonight's win over the Bulls?
Well, shout out to Brook Lopez. I mentioned on Twitter, the Bucks star players get rested all the time. Well, all the time, but pretty predictably. And then Brook Lopez just plays back-to-backs and gets trotted out there to try to tide things over, while Giannis and Chris and last year Drew, but this year obviously Dame, like these guys don't play, which is just hilarious because he's older than all of them, and had back surgery and missed most of this year 2 years ago. But Brook, ever reliable, tonight as well, actually hit a couple threes, kind of kept the Bucks in a little bit in the first quarter when Chicago began to stretch out the lead a little bit. So shout out to Brook for holding it down like he always does. I think otherwise, Lindell Wigginton did not distinguish himself as the starting point guard. 2 points on 1 for 7. Did have 3 steals, but 4 turnovers versus 3 assists. Again, we've seen enough of Lindell to know he's not exactly a pure point guard who's going to orchestrate the offense. Maybe you wouldn't notice as much if you had Chris and Giannis out there, but certainly with the group that was out there today, it was pretty noticeable. Ty Washington played a fair bit, 23 minutes, 2 for 7, 0 for 4 on threes, 6 points. Did have 7 assists and only 1 turnover. Obviously, he played more in the second half when Chicago also had their reserves in. I don't know that I have any fiery Ty Washington takes, but he looks like he looks like a point guard. I'll say that. So we'll see from him how much run he gets, especially given that, as you mentioned, not just Damian Lillard missing today, but Campaign as well. Certainly Campaign getting signed, one of the big losers were Ty Washington and Lindell Wigginton from that deal. So we may not see a whole lot of him with the Bucks this year, barring injuries. So we'll see if we can get much of a read on him in the preseason here. But, other than that, I mean, Pat Connaughton did Pat Connaughton stuff, right? 8 points, 8 rebounds in some short time, had a couple nice little wraparound passes off of kind of drives. And, Rolo was comically involved with his elbow catches and dribble handoffs and, having to orchestrate way more of the second unit offense than probably you would want him to. But, we still got that touch from on those little baby hooks. So we'll see. I am just generally curious. I mean, one of the sort of unknowns of this for this season is just I mean, is he going to play rarely? Is he going to play half the games? What's sort of the expectation? Obviously, in his previous stint here, I mean, that was a few years ago. He's let's just say kind of I think fallen off a bit, or at least certainly hasn't distinguished himself a whole lot since then. But he was a guy obviously that played most games. He was the backup center behind Brook in that prior stint. So we'll see if that is a thing, or if it ends up being much more of just the 3 big rotation between Giannis, Bobby, and Brook. But I always just enjoy Rolo doing Rolo stuff. And it was one of the things we were trying to figure out. How much, what did we learn from the Bucks defensively, offensively, in terms of the quote unquote new system, right? Did we see kind of clear evidence of stuff? I mean, it's not like they came out and were switching everything, 1 through 5 to start the game. I mean, I didn't see a whole lot of switching period in this game. We still saw Brook and Rolo more or less playing, drop defense. The fact that Nikola Vucevic was the opposing starting center, obviously you can't, play too deep on him. You can't treat him like Andre Drummond necessarily, but when Drummond was in, we didn't see necessarily them, camping out at the, charge circle the way that Brook did in that Pistons first round playoff series a few years ago. So, so we'll see. I mean, again, I think getting Lillard sort of forces, getting Lillard / losing Drew, I think, takes away some of your ability to play, again, a more switch heavy style from the outset. So, I don't know that they're going to look a ton differently defensively this year. We'll see if they can ramp up the pressure and force, more turnovers, as was discussed. I thought, they got lit up and transition early in this game. I saw the stat in the broadcast. I don't know if you caught this game, but 17 of the first 24 Chicago points were in it was like 17-0 in transition in the first quarter. And I was looking at the cleaning the glass stats for this game. By the end of the game, the Bucks actually had a nearly plus 7 points per 100 possessions added in transition versus the Bulls only 3. So it was like, okay, so I guess they turned that around. But certainly early on, it felt like the Bulls got a lot of early offense out of transition, and the Bucks, in terms of turnover percentage, did not do so well. Chicago did a better job taking care of the ball. Very slight benefit in terms of offensive rebounding, but the old Bucks didn't foul. Only 6%, only 6th percentile in terms of free throw rate for Chicago. And overall, again, what is the defensive rating in a first preseason game really mean? Not a whole lot, but Chicago 96 defensive rating. They barely got to the rim. And I always like to look, again, we always like to look at the 3-point percentages just to see how much of this is just 3-point variance. I mean, the Bulls made 37% of the threes. They took 35. I mean, that's probably high for what we've seen from the Bulls the last few years in terms of attempts. So it's not like the Bulls had a bad shooting game from 3 and the Bucks just sort of took advantage, right? I mean, Chicago shot 39% overall. So really the 2-point percentage was really what kind of helped the Bucks. So again, if DeMar DeRozan was more interested in, taking shots, maybe that's a little bit different story, but overall, pretty nice performance from the Bucks, all things considered. And Bucks only shot 10 of 33 from 3. So they didn't just kind of get lucky hitting a bunch of threes, but yeah, hey, bank a win. I mentioned last 3 years, Bucks came into this game 1-12 in the preseason. Prior to that, I think they were 8-1 in Bud's first 2 years when kind of they cared and they were engaged, and Giannis played more. And in the last 3 years, Giannis has been rested a ton. Probably has played half the preseason games the last few years. Has missed a lot of the preseason. And obviously, I don't think the Bucks have felt like they needed to, establish their identity in the preseason the way some teams might. So we'll see. Obviously, it's hard to kind of get too up or down about the team when their 3 best players don't play. But hey, these are always fun, right? Regular season games where they, the bench games where they can pull out a win always feel like a really fun evening to feel like you kind of steal a win without your A team. Less meaning in the preseason, but hey, winning's better than losing, and hopefully on Tuesday, maybe we see one of the big 3 can and make it a little bit more interesting in LA. But I'll cross my fingers. Maybe we see both Dame and Giannis. That would be pretty cool.
What a twist in the tale it would be if Chris Middleton's the one that plays the first game ahead of Giannis and Dame. But yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we'll be back with a post-game show after this.
Can I give one shout out? If people on YouTube, they may see I'm wearing this T-shirt that says "Keep Showing Up." Shout out to Jenny Fisher, Milwaukee native, works for the NBA. If you're on Twitter, you may have seen Jenny tweet stuff out, but she's been raising money for suicide prevention awareness for a few years now, and she's gotten tons of people to buy these shirts. So if you find her Twitter, Jenny Fisher, you can support suicide prevention awareness by buying a shirt. I think Kevin Love has one of these shirts, so I'm way down the list of interesting people to wear one of these shirts. But shout out to Jenny for supporting a great cause. And Kane, a lot of things in life are about showing up. Podcasting not so important, but we'll keep doing it for this as well. And game 1 under our belts, so this will not be the most exciting game we recap, but it is the first, and man, the season's here. That's pretty good.
Well, we're still 40 minutes in. So first game of the preseason, we're setting quite the precedents for the rest of the season. But we know that the Bucks fans are going to have some thoughts after this game as well. So drop them all in the YouTube comments specifically. I'll jump in there and interact with everyone that watches the show. We appreciate it. One in the books. Plenty more still to go this season and plenty more long podcasts. We'll speak to you all tomorrow.